Welcome to the Orthodontic Pearls Podcast, where we share tips and tricks to better your clinic, business, and life. And now your hosts of the podcast, Doctors Chris Teeters, Brian Anderson, and Andy Sarpadar.
We're back with another episode of the Orthodontic Pearls Podcast. By the time this airs, we will officially be in 2026. And I feel like the past few years have just absolutely flown by. Anyone else?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm going to be traveling for the holidays and haven't even really started getting ready for that.
It's crazy.
It's happening, guys.
We've got that coming up too. Chris and I are going to Europe in just about 2 weeks, right, Chris? Have you started packing yet?
It felt like, no, you know how we are. We pack last minute, but It was just last year. We were in New York and I felt like that was a month ago. I think whenever you lock onto a particular moment or a particular thing that you did, that year just really goes fast. You know, it's like hard to believe it was a year ago, but it's been a good fun one. Though. It's been a great year.
And I got to throw this in there as a science nerd. Of course, the older we get, the more time becomes relative, because 1 year now for me is 1/43 of my life.
Yeah.
Right. But when you're 6 years old, 1 year is 1/6 of your life. Right. So it's like a huge amount of time. So it just means we're getting older. So.
You know, I was reading up on that too, Brian. So yeah, there's the perspective part of it. And there's also the idea that the more events, especially stressful events that we have within a given time period, the more time slows down. And I was thinking, you know, why do the last few years feel like they've gone so quickly? Because maybe we're comparing to how time slowed down during COVID. You know, every hour was a crisis, you know, and we were dealing with new information, trying to figure out how to run our practices, trying to figure out how to keep our families safe. And that those couple of years felt like they took forever. Like that was like a decade within maybe 1-2 years. Yeah. And ever since then, it's like, oh, wow, that was like yesterday. So it still kind of feels to me like COVID was yesterday, if I'm being honest. It doesn't feel that far away.
Not 5 years ago. That's crazy.
Right. But I can't remember. I have a hard time remembering 2019, you know, the time before COVID. So maybe there's something to that as well. Well,
now, COVID wasn't all bad. I don't want to make light of this, but it was funny. My wife, Diana, mentioned to me the other day, she's like, do you kind of miss like during COVID, how you just could wake up every day and you didn't have to be anywhere or do anything? And like, that was actually kind of awesome in some ways. Like, you know, balance in all things, Andy, balance in all things.
Well, we talk about the concept of collateral beauty, and I think that's part of it, is you have to look for the lessons that life gives you in those moments of crisis, in the down times, and, you know, appreciate that no moment is all good or all bad, and you have to mine for the good, even in those times of crisis. So I think you're absolutely right there, Brian. Well, I want to start today's podcast with our thought of the day. And this one is, again, from Daniel Kahneman. I talk about him a lot, but if you haven't read Thinking Fast and Slow, again, please go out and get that book. It is a dense read, but it's just required reading, I think, to be a human being. Kahneman, of course, was a psychologist who helped found behavioral economics and won the Nobel Prize in 2002 for showing something that was pretty uncomfortable, and that's that humans are not nearly as rational as we like to think. Now, in college, I was drawn to economics because it made the world feel clean and logical. Scarce resources, rational actors, informed decisions. But those models only work if people are fully informed and act in their own best self-interest. After reading Kahneman, it becomes obvious that neither of these assumptions holds up in real life. One of his most powerful ideas is what he calls what you see is all there is. And in short, we build confident opinions based on whatever information happens to be in front of us, and rarely stop to ask, what am I missing? Our brains prioritize coherence over accuracy. We fill in gaps, ignore contradictions, and construct clean narratives that feel right even when they're wrong. This is closely related to the Dunning-Kruger effect. Confidence often comes from less information, not more. With fewer facts, it's easier to build a simple story. We assume that absence of evidence is evidence of absence. If I don't see a problem, then there isn't one. In my practice, we have a saying that if one person complains, 9 other people were thinking it and didn't say anything. We shouldn't be quick to dismiss a patient as unreasonable until we've carefully considered whether they are revealing a blind spot. Likewise, there's a saying that your patients agree with you. We tend to make assumptions about our markets based on the patients we have in front of us. However, what we're not seeing is the opportunity to serve those who did not choose our practice by expanding our scope into the preferences we do not see. I've noticed that when I feel absolutely certain about an opinion, that's often the moment I should be most suspicious of it. Seeking out information that contradicts our strongest beliefs is uncomfortable, but it's also where growth lives. And more often than not, those confident but incomplete opinions are the very things holding us back. So it is in this light that I wanted to introduce our guests today. We have spoken at length on the benefits and detriments of support organizations, but have never had guests this intimately familiar with the actual workings from an insider perspective. Our hope is that they can provide information and perspective from within the Chorus Orthodontic Support Organization that we may not normally be privy to. And of course, they get to push back a little bit after they do. First, we have Dr. Mary Cooke, an orthodontist practicing in Napa, California for the past 2 decades, the last 3 years of which she's been affiliated with Chorus. And she's also a fellow UCLA Bruin. So welcome to the show, Mary. How are you doing up there in Napa?
I'm doing great. It's a little cold today, but Napa's always wonderful year round. I'm really excited to be on the podcast today. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you here. And then, Chris, you're from not too far from Napa. I know I lived up there for a few years as well.
Yeah. Born and raised in Novato, and it's been a fun, humble journey. Love it up there. Best wine in the world and really great weather all year round. So we love it.
Also with us today is Tracy Moawad, a highly experienced business management and operations executive in the orthodontic space and currently the vice president of practice operations at Chorus. We're really glad to have you with us today. How are you doing, Tracy?
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing well. I am a little bit warmer probably than some of you down in LA. We're just all talking offline about the holiday coming up, and we're happy to be here today and getting excited for a little bit of a respite and wind down for the year.
Awesome. I want to kick this off by hearing your guys' stories. So why don't we start with you, Mary? Tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you here.
Awesome. Well, I really think that my journey with Chorus probably started with my journey with Hummingbird. I joined the Hummingbird Study Club in 2009, and that study club met every January, and it was a long weekend, and we would go every year. And I went every single year except for the January that my son was born. And the study club is primarily the same group of people, and they meet year over year. So we're in the same stages of our career, and we're going through the same growing pains. We shared ideas, successes, pain points. This is also the time, I got married during this 10 years. I had 2 babies. I was a sole owner of an orthodontic practice, 8 years on the CAO board, including being president, being on the PCSO board. And, I go back and I think about one year where I showed up at the study club and I was really down. Like I wasn't feeling great. And I go in and my colleagues they brought me up. Like their kind words, their thoughtfulness, they made me feel good about myself again during a time that was really hard. And after 10 years of going to these meetings with them and going through these experiences with them, learning about how ethical they are, their integrity, sharing all the ideas that we've had, we became super close. And it was actually this group of doctors that were the first group of doctors that joined Chorus or created Chorus. And I remember coming to one of these January meetings. I'm like, what's this Chorus thing? Why wasn't I invited? Like I kind of felt a little bit left out. And of course, that spurred me to find out more. And, I took the time. This is also right around COVID time. So nothing moved fast during that 2020 year. And, I spent time talking to Paul Halperd, to the other doctors, many of which I had been in the study club for 10 years. And what really attracted me to Chorus was, the collaboration, all of those 10 years, that support, that growth, that success with this group. I get to continue that with Chorus. One of my big passion projects is also giving back. As you can tell, I've done a lot of volunteer work, both in orthodontics and also in my community. And one of my biggest projects is supporting women in orthodontics, and Chorus is absolutely a huge supporter of women in orthodontics. And not least, of course, is the stewardship of our profession. And what I really mean by that is making sure that we keep the quality standards in orthodontics up, no matter how we're practicing, and also to take care of our doctors, our team members, and our patients, and making sure that I'm part of an organization that keeps all of these things at the forefront. I've been with Chorus, it's actually 4 years this month, and I can honestly tell you there's not been one moment that I've regretted that decision.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, quite a story there, Mary. And you've clearly been through some stuff. I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more detail as we go forward. But thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah. And, of course, speaking of roots in Hummingbird, Tracy, I think most of us recognize you from your affiliation with Hummingbird Associates. But your journey into the dental world actually goes much farther back than that. So where did your passion start, and how did that lead you to where you are today?
Thanks. Great question. Where to start? I have this bizarre story of, just the stars aligning, weird worlds crossing. It feels like someone took my background in orthodontics and business operations and private equity, put them all in a blender, and came up with a delicious smoothie at the end of it. Somehow it all worked out and tasted great. I grew up in dentistry. My dad owned a dental lab. I literally remember as a little girl learning how to, build a Pontic or help him in the lab. My mom worked in oral surgery, and I actually got braces in high school. So while I was in college, I decided to work as an ortho assistant part-time. That eventually, after I was done with college, I ended up on Bainbridge Island, somehow met Tracy Moawad and started working with her as a consultant, which really gave me an insider's view into how high performance practices really work and tick, and Karen's magic. And then I ended up relocating to the Bay Area during the .com era, and spent 15 years working for one of the largest private equity firms in the world, TPG. And one of my roles there was managing their global field operations team, which really set the tone and laid the foundation for how I think about building and growing businesses. We were responsible for going in. We had sort of deep functional experts in every area of a business. We had to come up with a business plan and execute, right? And so it was such a fun, exciting time. In 2015, I went back to Hummingbird and helped Karen build out what I think of today as what was really a best-in-class team of consultants. And I modeled it largely after that PE approach. We, all of the team had that deep functional expertise in every area of ortho: financials, business operations, scheduling, marketing, leadership, very important. And it was an amazing time. And then, as Mary said, in 2019, a group of high-performing Hummingbird practices came together, very concerned about what they were seeing in the consolidation industry and how it was moving into ortho, and wanted to protect and preserve that special core, group of private practices that really wanted to preserve community, still be, high-performing, high-functioning, but, preserve it, right? And so it was just an amazing thing to watch, being part of Hummingbird, watching this group decide after being together in study clubs for so long to create that together. And fast forward, when the opportunity came up for me in 2024 to join Chorus, it was kind of like coming home. I could have never scripted all of that, right? Taking all of those things and putting them together. But I love it, and literally feels like something I was built for.
That's fantastic. I love when a story comes together like that. And I have an interesting question for you. Now, you and Karen share the same last name, but you're not related directly. And that's kind of an unusual last name. Is there a story behind that?
There is a story. That might be a story for drinks sometimes, guys. But yes, I am married to one of Karen's sons. So I met Karen first, and we like to say that we picked out my husband, right?
Love it. Okay.
That's so cool.
All right. Thanks for clarifying that point. I'm sure many of our listeners were wondering.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Why don't we just get right into the pearls section here? So Chris, I'm going to kick this off to you and let's talk about some boots on the ground, actionable items that people can implement in their practices on Monday.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest things our listeners love is some pearls that they can use and take home. And after all your years of, with Hummingbird Consulting, we've heard through our forums that it's just like the best of the best. And, a lot of top practices and close friends of ours, what do we find in common? Well, they used Hummingbird, and there's a good reason for that. So I was just hoping you could share some of your, scheduling or systems pearls with our audiences that can, get them headed in the right direction, being more toward a Hummingbird type practice.
I think when it comes to scheduling in particular, that's certainly something Karen was known for and sort of what she, founded part of Hummingbird on. You'd be hard pressed to, argue that she isn't the guru of practice systems and helping schedules and practices grow. For me, when I think about scheduling in particular, which is, the foundation or the platform through which you can grow a practice. I would say don't overlook the importance of pre-planning. First of all, make sure you actually really need a new schedule, right? There are a lot of other things that could be happening that you need to dig into. And that's often, Mary, the first thing we jump to. We need a new schedule, but you might find that they're not actually following the template that you have, or there are other things you can do, right?
Yep.
Because we all know building a new schedule is quite an undertaking. But once you determine that that's where you want to go, I would say be really thoughtful about it. Be intentional. Think about, make a list of all the desired outcomes and what your non-negotiables are with that new schedule. Whether it's running on time, making sure that you want to, absolutely have a records tech available following every exam appointment, patients finished, whatever it is, and involve your team in that discussion, because if the doctor alone is the one that's building a schedule with a consultant, I guarantee you're going to miss things, right? And it's a schedule that's being forced upon your team as opposed to really optimized through your team, because they're the ones that live and breathe it every day.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. We found that too. Whenever we have done some blocking schedules, they just override the block, or they go, this is not going to work. And so, I love hearing these things on like you said, some non-negotiables and also some flex, right? Depending on the team. Yeah. So how's that work for you, Mary?
Yeah, I've been doing the Hummingbird schedule probably for 18 of my 20 years. And I think one of the things to always remember, it's not like set it and forget it. It's as you change your treatment modalities, if you're going more aligners, if you're going more brackets, if you're changing bracket systems, all of these things are going to change the frequency of appointments. It's going to change the length of appointments. And so it's really kind of figuring out how often you should invest time and resources in one, checking how long the appointment types are. When is the doctor time? Finding that accuracy and doing it on a rotation that makes sense keeps that schedule accurate and more reflective of what's going on in your practice.
Awesome. So in terms of something to, let's say, implement on Monday, like maybe what's one thing that an orthodontist could do with their schedule that would be helpful? Like, for example, I took the JSOP course, and, Ron Ronconi's like, well, my way is the best, and that's like things at like times. He's like, but that's not the Hummingbird way. So tell me your thoughts on that, and like, what's a good takeaway like Monday? What's one thing someone could do and say, okay, I'm going to optimize my schedule a little bit. This is that thing.
So I think one of the big things that actually leads to a lot of staff happiness is making sure that the appointment lengths are accurate. So I know how long I think arch wires should change, but that might be different from what my team says. So really making sure that my team has some input on the appointment length. Sometimes we're adding new things to an appointment, yet we're not changing the length. So it makes them go over, and then that decreases satisfaction for the team and for the patients. So I think maybe the first step, Chris, is making sure that the appointment lengths are accurate. And if your management system can keep track of that, that helps.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah,
I was even going to say too, if you're going to build a new schedule, that is a critical pre-planning piece. You've got to go through every appointment. Is this, this configuration even accurate anymore? Do we need this procedure anymore, right? I mean, does it reflect, to Mary's point, how we're actually practicing today? Yeah. If you've changed your treatment modality, you may have built your schedule on something else entirely 5 years ago, right? So being really thoughtful about that. We always used to recommend, at least once a year, but if you have a place that you can be tracking things that aren't, quite working throughout a year. So you have time to reflect back on it as you get ready to plan for the following year. It's so important.
I love that. As you're saying that, I realized I have an appliance and scan when we had the original iTero that took like 40 minutes to scan. And now it probably takes 10 minutes to scan. And I don't think we've revised that. So thank you. You've really helped me. And I need to look at all those appointments and see about
40 minutes
those,
for a scan, Chris? When are you practicing?
I think upper lower photos,
it was chiseling
whatever.
it out of stone.
Probably alginate. Maybe it was back on the PVS days. I don't know.
Or thinking about, to Mary's point, when we built this appointment configuration, we put the doctor time in a certain place. Is that happening anymore? Did we change something along the way, right? Because if you do that enough times throughout your schedule doesn't work anymore. And you really need to be thinking about those things. And it's hard to carve out time and pause and really step back and evaluate that. And I would say that's where your leadership team can really come in too, right? If they're focused on the right things, they'll pick up on that as well.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about, scheduling is just like one little piece of it, but there's much bigger things. So what would you say is some good advice from that bigger level is maybe one of the biggest problems you see in an orthodontic practice that you've gone into that you could help them resolve? Like what's a common theme that keeps coming back?
Mary and I have been talking about this a little bit. Mary, the first thing that came to my mind is really getting clear on what your plan is, what your vision is, where you want to go, right? Because if you as a doctor and a leader are not clear about that, your team certainly won't know. And one of my favorite sayings is you go where you're looking. And if you're not looking in any one particular place or everybody is looking in different directions, you're never going to get to your destination, right? So I would start there, even if it means taking a step back and really thinking through, okay, have I shifted my vision? Have I shifted my goals? Have I shifted my strategy?
And I would agree with that, Tracy, because recently I kind of went through a very big staff changeover, and I stopped in October, and I actually sat down and I created my vision and my values and my mission. And honestly, since that moment, I have had a humongous change in the culture of my office. And kind of once I know where I'm going with my values and my vision and my mission, it's so much easier to make choices regarding team members, patients, everything, every step of the way. So I think taking that time and doing a deep dive within yourself is huge.
Love it.
Yeah, that reminds me of the quote from Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Yes.
Or you'll end up on any road.
That's true too. So Mary, I know you run a busy practice and that's always a challenge. So we're always in search of systems that help like automate important things. And you talked a lot about in our pre-interview about systems. So maybe you could like talk about some of those systems that have really helped your practice.
Absolutely. So I'm kind of one of those doctors. I need to know how to do it, and then I can give it to somebody. But that step of knowing how and then transferring that information to somebody else, that becomes hard. So one of the key things that I do in my practice is using Snagit. So if there's something in Dolphin I need to show somebody, I'm going to film it and I'm going to save it, upload it to YouTube, and then I'm going to send the video to Asana. So then I'm going to keep all this information in Asana, and they can go back and they're like, oh, Dr. Cooke, how do I do this? And I'm like, well, why don't you search it up in Asana and watch the video? So I've already videotaped it. It's in Asana. And now you can even use Asana and these Snagits for everyday training. So I have a new financial coordinator. So I filmed on how to put a contract into Dolphin. So when I'm hiring this new person, they can go to the Asana, they watch the video on how to enter a contract. And if you have more turnover, and let's be real, staff turnover is probably higher than it's ever been before. And we are going to have more turnover. And without these systems in place, like Asana with training, Snagit videos, then it's going to be really hard to handle this turnover. And I think that is just going to be a reality, and we have to plan ahead for that.
That's a great pearl.
Mary, you said Snagit.
Yes.
What is that? Like a software? Is that a website? How do you spell that?
Snagit. And they also have Camtasia, which is a little bit fancier program. I like Snagit because I just want to be able to film it, do quick editing. I could add, arrows and stuff like that. and then download it as an MP4 and then upload it to YouTube. And then I can put it wherever I want. And it's a training video and it's available all the time.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you just go online to search for Snagit and that should come up.
Yep. And I think I just bought one for my TC, and this is also awesome. So I put it on her computer, and then like an hour later, I needed to send at a really complicated extraction case. So I turned on Snagit, brought up the imaging, showed the surgeon exactly which teeth I wanted to extract because it was a cleft case. And then I'm able to send that video to the surgeon, and there's no doubt about which teeth I want out.
That's amazing. That's something I'm going to download on Monday.
You should.
I love that.
It's great. Yeah.
First thing I'm going to do on Monday is record a video of when there's computer trouble, turn it off and turn it back on again.
Yeah, there we go.
Doc, I'm having problems with my computer, right?
Hard to do when your computer's not working.
Yeah.
Mary, you also mentioned Asana. I don't know if any of you, Chris, Andy, or Brian, are familiar with Asana, but this is a workflow and project management tool that is becoming more widely used, I think, in ortho. But Mary and I started using it as a tool way back when we used to have our, role checklist in Excel, and we needed a better tool that was more dynamic. And now it truly is so expansive. You can use it to manage workflows in your practice. It has integrations with pretty much anything you're using, checklists that with recurring, tasks, the details of how to do that task. So let's say you've got a list of reports that each person in practice is responsible for running, and you're training somebody new. It pops up that it's due today. You click in the description. It lists everything about how to run the report. Go to Dolphin, go to reports, click on this, why we use it. It's just such an amazing tool. There are other tools like it out there, but I highly encourage practices to be thinking about digital training, digital libraries, and workflows.
Yes.
It's also, frankly, how, workforces operate today. Like they grew up on, digital devices. A paper manual is not going to resonate anymore. And it's much harder to keep up.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. In fact, that was something another fellow hummingbird, Cassie Kellner, right? She has a consulting business where she
Everbloom,
will optimize Everbloom, where she'll optimize your Asana training and teach your team how to use that. So that's something that's on our list to get done as well. But we've been using Asana, the free version, for a while, and we could not operate our practice without it. So there you go. There's another tip.
You need to upgrade, Andy.
I do need to upgrade. Yeah, there's a long list of upgrades. My practice definitely needs some upgrades.
Yeah, and Cassie has helped me a lot in giving me inspiration on how to take my Asana to the next level.
I love that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, guys, I want to get into a little bit of the meat of the conversation here. So you're here, of course, to discuss support organizations and Chorus in particular. Now, we are coming to recognize that each of these support organizations has a unique niche, has a unique culture. Tell us a little bit about Chorus specifically. This is maybe one of the ones we don't hear too much about on the forums. But tell us a little bit about what is different about Chorus.
It kind of goes back to what we talked about before, like why I joined Chorus, that group of doctors from Hummingbird Study Club. We practice what we value. We wanted like real partnership. We wanted real service, real collaboration. Behind the scenes, we have a text message thread with like 55 doctors, and, we're celebrating everything from our accomplishments to sharing cases that we need to get advice about. And we're there for each other. We even have like the women's text message thread because, we have our own things that we like to talk about too. But we're able to talk about solutions. We share solutions. And I think the most important part to me is I get to continue to grow alongside these people who I care about and who care about me, and they make me better. And I really, really appreciate that. And I think that's why you probably don't hear as much about Chorus because, to be honest, like selectivity really matters for us, right? If we are going to keep these core values of what Chorus stands for, then we need to make sure that the people who join us feel the same way. So when I joined, I'm not trying to this is not my exit strategy. This is about me continuing to grow and enjoying my practice. And kind of like what Brian had said before we started is that, you can join a service organization and it can make you miserable, right? And you could just be counting down the days. My friend joined a DSO. She has an app on the countdown before she gets to retire. I never want to be an organization that I'm looking at how many days out am I. I want to go out and feeling like I'm leaving my practice at the highest level it's ever been. And that's, I feel like, what Chorus has brought to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest fear that a lot of people have. And you do hear some horror stories out there. So what are your thoughts on that, Tracy, from your perspective?
Well, you heard me talk earlier about why Chorus was founded in the first place and what that core group is all about. And that really has continued to carry through in how they built the organization. It's a doctor-led, doctor-owned company, right? 90% of the equity is owned by the doctor partners. And we have a world-class operations team, but we serve the doctors and they really help drive the strategy. We get a ton of input from them. It's like I said, it was like coming home and away. Mary has always been my friend and was a client, and now she's a friend and a partner, and she's still my customer, right? And so it's a very engaged community. And Mary, you also said something really important. When you think about transitions, we really do focus on our future partners, and those transitions we know are critical to the long-term success of Chorus. It's not about just finding somebody to step in and eventually take over Mary's practice. It's about finding the right partner with the right values who can continue to contribute to the community, who will carry on Mary's legacy. And we start planning for that very early days, right? Like we talk to Mary all the time about, 5-7 years. What does that look like for you? We build it into our annual planning process so that we can be looking and, be thoughtful about when that right person comes along. And then we spend a lot of time really developing those doctors. So the associate development program we have is designed, and we invest very heavily in making sure that they get, exposure to a lot of different doctors and a lot of different concepts, and spend enough time with the doctor so that it's an easy transition. And in fact, what we're finding is it's kind of bizarre, Mary. I don't think we really expected this or anticipated it, but we actually have a lot of doctors who are now like, oh, actually, I want to stay around, right? I'd like to slow down, but this is fun now again, right? And I want to contribute in new ways. And, they're joining committees and they're helping us develop new career paths and ideas and programs. And it's growing, it's snowballing, right? Like the idea of community is snowballing, and it's been really fantastic to watch.
I wanted to ask you, you mentioned about the ownership structure there. You said it's 90% doctor owned. Is that mostly the affiliates, like the doctors practicing who own 90% of it? Or is it more like a board of doctors who started this thing? You mentioned this started in Hummingbird. Tell us about the ownership structure and what someone who's coming into this organization could expect.
Yeah. So I think, like I said, what makes Chorus unique is that it is almost exclusively doctor owned. So, 90% of Chorus is owned by the doctor partners themselves. It's not, when they join Chorus, we essentially buy their practice for the amount that we say we're going to buy it for, part in cash, part in equity. And that puts everybody on the same level playing field, right? Mary mentioned, my success is everyone's success. And that's absolutely true. And which is the beauty of helping each other succeed, because we all benefit, right, as shareholders from that. Because we didn't really build the business on the idea of recapitalization, we're more focused on natural organic growth, right? And as we acquire new partners, it is the same model perpetuating, right? So they become new owners with equity, with a stake, a part of that community as well. So it's like I said, I think it's a unique model. If we do end up bringing minority investors in, it will only be to help, fund the business and grow the business. The doctor partners will always be the major shareholders.
Yeah, you mentioned that your model's not built on this idea of recapitalization, which is frankly a huge part of the value that most people see from a sale. Is the intention not to recap, or is it just not the focus?
It's just not the focus. The model that we have is doctors are able to get liquidity and really kind of take some chips off the table, if you will, just by selling their shares over time to incoming partners. Those minority investors will help, but they have the mechanism to do that without the recap. And that, allows them to, again, kind of dip into their shares or their equity without having to just bank on solely that equity event or that major recap event.
Well, so I think that's, it's interesting. Of course, one of the things that I find fascinating is that this model can have different iterations. And one thing that I'm noticing is, Mary, you talked about, really, it seemed like it was human connection and values that were the most important to you, that brought you together with that Hummingbird group. And that was really maybe the impetus to become a part of a group. And since recapitalization is not the priority, it sounds like your group is founded on mainly on values, and that money is maybe secondary. And maybe I'm not seeing that or saying that articulately, but one point I wanted to make that I think is important to just realize when you're considering support organizations and private equity getting involved is think about what values drive you. What values drive you and what values drive your practice, because ultimately those values are responsible for your success to a pretty significant degree. And so if private equity gets involved, I think it's important to consider how now that money is becoming increasingly a focus, how can we maintain those original values that kept us together? And it sounds like you guys have a model that's maybe a longer vision, maybe than some other organizations that maybe have, a shorter vision of like recapitalizations quickly, right? But what I'm hearing is it seems like you're catering more to doctors who want to have relationships, long-term relationships, and shared values. And hey, if something like a recapitalization does happen, maybe it will happen over time, but we want this to be something where people want to be here, want to stay, and they don't view it as an exit. Because I think you mentioned that, Mary, right? That you don't view this as an exit strategy, but this is just an ongoing part of your practice. Is that fair to say?
I think that really captures how we feel about it. And I think, so one of the concerns always is like, we know that the original crew that started Chorus, we all felt like that. So how do we continue that and perpetuate that into the future? Because it is, again, going back to the stewardship of our profession. And so in order to really believe in that and follow that, then we need to really, again, be selective. We need to find the new doctors that are going to be partnering with us that believe in those same values. And of course, profits matter. Like if anybody says they don't matter, then they're lying. But at the same time, can we do it with care and integrity and still make money? 100%. That's how I felt. I built my practice from the beginning, is with integrity. I've done well financially, and we can continue to do well financially and still have integrity. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's just a really important thing to balance, to consider. How can I be focused on running a business, and we have to be profitable, making money, but not having money be the primary focus? Because the way that I see it, attachment to money is to a thing. And that's why it's not inspiring, really. It doesn't inspire. It doesn't continue to give life, right? And something that continues to give life is what sustains things moving forward. So if you're attached to money, it's kind of a death. Like it's kind of dead. Like because money doesn't inspire. It's power, of course, but power is not in and of itself inspiring. What tends to be inspiring, in my experience, is connection. A sense of something bigger than just me. There's something more. I guess a sense of gratitude, a sense of awe, something like that. Those tend to be these sustaining things that push something forward and keep something moving forward, right? So I think The balance is when you have money becoming increasingly important, how do you not lose the very things that made your company successful? The values, right? So it is a tricky balance. And I think we're going to see over the next few years that I think it'll show that those groups that aren't able to maintain those values won't have longevity, and doctors won't stay.
Yeah.
And then when money does become the primary motivator, the business will then suffer because why? Well, because what brought people and attracted people wasn't just the service, or wasn't just the product, wasn't just the phenomenal material thing. It was the phenomenal material thing attached to humanity and connection.
Yeah.
And so as soon as you eliminate that, I think eventually things fail. They fail. And so, to me, that's going to be very important, I think, for people to realize as they're considering joining an OSO or a DSO. And how are we going to maintain what we have as a core group now? Because we started this, and it's the same thing. My experience, wanting to be part of something bigger and thinking, hey, this is going to be collaborative and this and that and the other. And of course, sometimes it pans out and sometimes it doesn't. But just to our audience members, I think, consider that and consider what you want. Like, do you want to be done in 5 years, 4 years, whatever your contract length is? Or do you want this to be something that's can perpetuate, and do you want to be involved long-term? And how is that going to be different financially for you,
Yeah.
Ryan, I want to just comment there that is one of the biggest arguments against some of these OSOs is when you have a big private equity influence, the values are money. That's private equity is just about money. Now the values are good as long as they're serving the ultimate goal of that money. So the more balance you have towards that private equity side, the less influence the doctor's values are going to have. In an ideal scenario, this doesn't happen all the time. I'm going to be forthright with you that some of the worst practices are private practices, because they have no guardrails. But I also think that some of the best practices tend to be private practices because a virtuous doctor who has good values that are centered in patient care simultaneously with profitability. And let's be honest, like we said, profitability matters. Not a single person listening to us here doesn't have profitability as one of their targets. You physically can't serve people without that. But when your decision makers, the primary goal is that maximization of profit, that's where you start to fall off the rails. And I have worked in corporations like that where it is just so toxic and soul draining because it is just about squeezing that sponge until that office manager, until that regional manager can get a promotion or move on to a different company. And then it doesn't matter. Long-term doesn't matter at all in those scenarios, nor do the patients. They just don't care. And I'm hopeful that there's OSOs out there that are going to find that balance, because I think that there is a lot to be said about this being the future. It's going to be an influential part of orthodontics going forward. It's never going away, and I really hope that the ones that survive are the ones that can find that balance.
I think that's going to be the secret. Brian, I think you're right. I think eventually we'll see some fallout, right? And those are likely going to be the ones that were built for the quick flip and not long-term sustainability. Those are the ones that are structured where the investors get their money out first, right? When there is a recap. And the doctors are left with whatever's left in equity. We've been really intentional about building Chorus in a different way. In fact, even when a doctor joins Chorus, there's the initial, part cash, part equity, but they actually become a 50-50 partner and share in the profit 50-50, which is quite unusual, right? So there is a lot of continued upside just in partnering with the community, and everybody benefits from an individual practice's success, which solidifies that community even more. I really do hope that we see a few OSOs or DSOs rise to the surface with that focus on the human side of it, because it's so critical, right? For the long-term success of frankly, the industry, right? Right now, OSOs, absolutely, I think, make up about 18% of orthodontics, and we're going to see that continue to grow. I think private practices are naturally gravitating towards that operational support. It's becoming more and more challenging and complex. And the key, I think, for a private practitioner who's considering that is to really, again, come back to your values and choose an organization that really resonates for you in that way.
Well, Tracy, I want to ask a couple of challenging questions here. First of all, the topic of support organizations can be a contentious one. Certainly in our forum, we have seen some heated debates about this. I want to ask both of you directly, from your perspective, what are 3 good reasons why a doctor should definitely partner with an OSO? And what are 3 reasons that they definitely should not partner with the OSO?
Mary and I were just talking about this the other day, Mary.
Yeah, can we answer that together?
Absolutely. Yep.
One is collaboration. So I think one of the biggest reasons you want to join is collaboration. It's like you have a built-in study club all the time. I think one of the biggest reasons not to do it would be kind of like a lone wolf. If you don't want to be part of the pack, kind of just like the antithesis of collaboration is, I don't want to be part of a group and I don't want to be part of a growth mindset, then you're probably not going to enjoy it. What this brings to the table is the ability to implement new ideas and troubleshoot any areas that you have pain points around. So I think that being part of the collaboration is critical to being part of Chorus.
So group-minded, that's a good fit. Someone who's more of a lone wolf and more independently minded, that's someone who may not be the right fit.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about profitability being important, whether you're in private practice or a group setting. And that's just it, right? The Chorus is definitely focused and founded on performance excellence. And if that excites you and you just need some extra help getting there and you want to continue to innovate, then that might be something, that you'd want to consider. If you think you've got it all figured out, or you're just kind of coasting at this point, or you're looking to exit soon, or your team is really not interested in change and that's not ever been a part of your culture, it's probably going to be a challenging new environment for you to operate in. So just think about your why, right? Why am I even considering this? If it's just for a quick transition, find an organization that seems to be focused on that. But really think about not only your values, coming back to our earlier conversation, but how it's going to impact your team, right? And ask those questions for sure.
So it's if your values are aligned and you are more of a long-term growth strategy, and that harmonizes, that you agree with the growth strategy of your OSO, that would be a good option. But if you're looking for a quick exit, probably not. That's more of a private sale. Is that correct?
Well, private sale, or there are some, the ones that are focused on flips and just really have the perpetual associate model. That could be a fit too, right? But I would just, again, be really thinking about how much legacy means to you. What, ask if your team is important to you, ask those questions, because those are the scenarios that, that things could change pretty quickly and not in a way you expected.
Legacy can be a tricky one there, because I think that a lot of doctors would consider the private sale to be the legacy builder, or the way to continue your legacy. What do you think about that? Like, in what ways would this be? Would a sale to an OSO like Chorus be a better way of preserving that legacy, or is it a better way in your opinion?
Well, if I may just quickly, I had a bad sale coming, from the other direction, and I sold one, and that didn't go well. And then one that I've bought 3 practices, but I think that the whole process of bringing in new partners for Chorus helps kind of eliminate some of that transition. Like you said, you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't want to go down this road. And I feel like for my legacy, I think there's a better chance that the transition goes smoothly. And when my grandchildren need orthodontics, I'm going to feel comfortable that they're going to be coming to this office and being taken care of, because I know that standard of care is going to be held high.
That brings me to one of the potential differences. And again, it's really hard to generalize because, like I said, there is a spectrum of both support organizations and private practices. And what I've said before is that one of the advantages of, one of the disadvantages potentially of private practice is also one of the potential advantages, which is that there are no real guardrails, but that's also no restrictions. So a very talented, well-intentioned doctor who can wear the hats of business ownership, management, marketing, as well as be an excellent clinician, that kind of person may thrive without those restrictions. However, someone who is unscrupulous and very money driven or just doesn't care, got into this whole profession for the wrong reasons. I've seen some of the worst practices have no guardrails in private. And I've literally seen one out here where the doctor straight up abandoned his patients, just got sick of it, was not profitable, was in debt, several $100,000 to some of the vendors around here, and then just decided not to go into the office one day, and his team was just left hanging. So there's that too. That I don't see that happening actually, ironically, that same person was in a support organization, did the same thing there. But they were able to cover, they had doctors and systems. Now, the other part of that though, is that with the wrong kind of OSO, those restrictions, especially if they're money driven. Again, we get back to that balance, right? If the decision makers are primarily about profit at the expense of all else, then you could be a very good doctor with a lot of potential who cannot serve your patients properly because they won't get you the right equipment. I've been in offices where they will not stock brackets until it's just-in-time ordering. They won't stock the brackets until your profitability reaches a certain point, and it's almost a punitive measure. But this is an example of a terrible system. So a patient comes in wanting a same-day start, and you don't have the brackets to do it. And I have seen them actually pressure doctors to just put on whatever we have because insurance counts the start as metal in the mouth. That literally happens. So again, those same quote-unquote guardrails that could prevent catastrophe can also restrict someone from providing the quality of care that they want. So I'm sure that's not the case in your organization, but it is a concern, and I think one that a lot of people do have out there.
Coming back to, be sure you're asking the right questions. I mean, one of the things that happens when you join Chorus as a partner is you gain immediate synergies through our platform of purchasing, but we don't and can't direct clinical care, right? You are the decision maker when it comes to how you treat patients. And I think that's really important to qualify, right? If you're considering a route like this. Now, we do have doctors that can help each other, be better at what they do. And that's the beauty of it. But we're certainly not going to tell you have to do this, use this bracket or treat in this way.
I think by my count, that's two for each, right? We have two for why you should and two for why you shouldn't. Let's think of like a third one. Give me one more reason why someone should definitely join an OSO.
I know we said you shouldn't join if you want an exit strategy, but I think if you want a transition team that you should join something like this. So like for me, I have a 12-year-old. He's 7th grade. I'm going to be working for a long time, right? Like we have to get him through high school and college and whatnot. So I'm not ready to retire anytime soon. But at the same time, I might consider my husband gets to retire in 2 years. So I might want to cut back a little bit. I know, right? I'm already making the list, but it's on the board of all my honeydews. When he transitions to retirement, I know that I'm going to want a little bit more free time to spend with him. And then shortly after that, my oldest will be going off to college, and I'm, of course, going to want to be visiting him more often. So they're able to help identify associates and potentially future partners. And so I'm a planner, and I'm sure all of you guys are. And so one of the things that's always kind of been a stress is like, how is this transition going to happen eventually? And having a team, and the team, our transition team, the ones who identify associates and future partners, they're amazing. Like they're fabulous. Okay. And they are out there meeting the residents. So they're meeting them when they're in their residencies and truly kind of learning about them and finding out if they would be a good fit for one of our doctors. And at the same time, they're talking to me and finding out who would be a good fit for Mary. What is your personality type? Who would work well with you? Who would be a good partner, in the future in your practice? And I love that idea that, I'm already having like a behind the scenes team figuring out the best fit, when that fit would be, how we would transition. And it's actually kind of a relief for me that I don't have to figure this out all by myself.
Great point.
Yeah,
Great
it's
point.
Actually so true. There's a whole group of orthodontists, right, that are on the cusp of retiring, and they've sort of passed that window of having the time and the luxury of time to find the right person. And a lot of times when you're at that point in your career, your practice may have started to decline over the years, and that's not really, the type of partner that we're looking for at Chorus. And then you get boxed into a corner, right? So the fact that you have the ability to plan that and be really thoughtful and find the right person is great. I would say too, we're really focused, as I mentioned, on associate development. And so there's a huge benefit to joining Chorus as a young doctor, even just out of school, because we have such a strong development program. I mean, imagine, Andy, Brian, and Chris, if you all learned the hard way, right? You had to figure, all of you had to figure this out over however many years. And imagine being able to come right out of school and jump into a Hummingbird style group of orthodontists who are willing to mentor and coach and share everything they know with you, and essentially buy into an amazing practice that's already been vetted and has those systems in place. It's a pretty cool, idea if you are looking for that growth and mentorship and again, sort of legacy, right? And then you get to take it and make it your own.
Well, great
I think
points,
we need
guys.
one more negative, right? I can't think of one.
We need one more negative. We can keep this one quick, but I want to hear one more.
It's interesting. I almost think of these positives as the flip side is the negative, right? If you are a young doctor and you really do want to just kind of either be a perpetual associate and just work in a practice and not have to, worry about managing a team or a practice at night and just check in and punch the clock, then, you probably don't want to join a group. Or if you just want to do things your own way, right? We all know what a long haul that is, but I'm sure there are entrepreneurs out there that, really just are interested in doing their own thing.
Well, final question as far as the controversy goes. So this one's kind of a doozy. Now, practice valuations, they haven't moved very much. The multiples you typically see are kind of the same, but the way that certain aspects of those valuations are weighted has become different. We have noted over time that the terms can be sometimes less favorable to the doctor. So, for example, some of these valuations we're seeing, the doctor is asked to finance part of the sale themselves, and that comes in the form of unsecured debt. Meaning that if the company folds, then the doctor loses the portion of valuation that was financed. And that's obviously a massive, massive hit. Likewise, performance bonuses and retention incentives often take up a larger portion of the overall valuation nowadays compared to, say, the boom times of the early 2020s. Can either of you comment on how practice valuations have changed and whether the market stagnation we've seen, we can all agree that things have slowed down a little bit in terms of acquisitions. Has that affected those counting on recap events to make the sale worthwhile? And are the deals that we're seeing now as good as they were before? And in what ways might they be better or worse than what we've seen in the past?
I would say they've changed, right? I mean, if we think back 15 years to when some of the larger groups were really getting started, we saw, the scale efforts and higher valuations. They're still really solid in the market, but I think, the industry or the consolidation industry is being more careful. And doctors, frankly, are being more careful, right? And they should be. That's a good thing. They're asking better questions. They're looking past just the headline number. They're hopefully really vetting that equity side of it. And I think that's why Chorus has been so intentional about the way we structure it. Like I said, when we partner with a practice, it's part cash, part equity. They can, they become an immediate owner and share 50-50 in the profits, which is quite unique. We're not dangling these carrots, these maybe carrots. Over time, they are able to get liquidity without having to rely on a recap. And I would just, say that you really, if you're thinking about this, those are the questions you need to ask. I have to imagine, I know we are being very thoughtful about it, but I have to imagine all of the other OSOs and DSOs are the interest rates are different, the climate's different. And so we're not seeing the same landscape we did before. But I really do believe our model is structured in a way to mitigate that risk, right?
And I just have a question. I've got a question about what systems of checks and balances do you have as money becomes, increasingly a primary motivating factor in a group, an organization, a corporation. As money, there's now shareholders and there are people with, vested interests. Are there systems of checks and balances to prevent money from becoming the primary focus? Because, of course, when that becomes a primary focus, that I think comes at the cost of patient care. I think that comes at the cost of, doctor satisfaction. I think that comes at the cost of our humanity, which, again, in my opinion, isn't sustainable. So it sounds like your intention is to be one of slow growth for the long haul. And I say slow, that's just relative, right? It doesn't mean
sustainable, right?
Yeah, sustainable. And when I observe nature, it seems like long, slow growth tends to be the most powerful over time. And things that are, shoot up quickly also tend to die quickly. The roots aren't very deep, right? So really, I'm just curious about, is there a system of checks and balances? And if there is, what is that to help you guys, be sustainable and continue to have great patient care and good doctor satisfaction?
Well, actually, I was going to say that's probably, at least, from a corporate perspective or home office perspective, our biggest checks and balance or check and balances is doctor engagement, doctor happiness, doctor satisfaction, right? And that's one of the reasons we do have this profit sharing model, because it aligns everybody, right? If they're benefiting from the overall success of the network, if we are focused on engagement, and we do annual engagement surveys internally and across our practices every year, and it continues to rise and improve, that is the best way that you can get alignment and ensure that we're operating from a place of joy and collaboration and continual process improvement. If our partners weren't happy, we would not be successful. We would not have seen the double-digit growth that we've seen over the last 5.5 years. And I really do think that's the success factor, the secret success factor. Mary, I don't know if you have anything to add just from a doctor-partner perspective.
No, I think that what Tracy was saying is checking with the doctors and seeing what their satisfaction, but also the team member. So it's not just the doctor level, it's also the team member level. And as you know, kind of the practice goes often where the team goes. And so really being able to recognize where they need to be supported, identifying areas where our leadership team can step in and help, that makes a big difference. And honestly, I think I can actually, if you took my team satisfaction and my production, I would say that they are very parallel.
And that's true in private practice as well, right? I mean, it really is a lead indicator in many ways.
But what I like about it, Tracy, is that sometimes I'm not aware, I'm a busy mom. I'm the lacrosse president. I do all these other things. So I may not always be aware about all those little things that are going on, but having my regional manager who's accessible to my team, she might get a little heads up and kind of give me a nudge like, hey, Mary, you might want to pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm curious, having the background with Hummingbird, with staffing challenges, rising wage pressures, and rapid automation transforming ortho, What do you think the ortho workforce is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years? And how is Chorus preparing for its doctors and teams to transition into that future?
Great question. I've actually been raising the flag on this for a number of years now. I know you're all probably feeling the pressure. I know, in certain markets, it's more intense than others, Mary's in particular. In California, I think, we've seen hourly wages go up $4 an hour over the last couple of years, which is crazy. Yeah. And I would argue that, practices aren't tracking their own fees and increasing their fees to combat that, right? So your profit margins are shrinking. But it's also the workforce in general. If you think about the complexity, the pace of the jobs that we're asking our team members to do on a daily basis relative to what they could go out and here in California, you can start at Costco for $25 an hour, full benefits, immediate benefits, a sign-on bonus, and you're just checking your receipt or stocking, right? They just passed a law last year where minimum wage at fast food restaurants is $21 an hour. And so that's what we're up against. I also think it's really important to think about the shift that's happening just in general in terms of younger workforces. They were not raised making telephone calls. They were not raised doing manual, following up on leads, those type of things that our practices were founded on and still largely operate on, right? So we need to be thinking about how we can tap into technology, tools, automation to keep it exciting, to Brian's point, right? How do we create a dynamic environment for these new workforces coming in, but also simplify? Consumers are becoming more savvy too, right? I mean, think about what we do in an ortho practice compared to what your experience might be making your appointment online, getting a text from another care provider that you have, whether it's, dental, whatever, right? There, in a lot of ways, I think we're still a little behind the 8 ball there, and we've got to start catching up and adapting.
Tracy,
I would say the good news
is
that technology is coming, right? It's here, actually.
Yeah. Well, from a scheduling perspective, I see, a lot of people do their new patient exam like funnel online where they can schedule an appointment. But then most places, even like pediatricians, whatnot, can schedule their appointment online. I know that's a huge, huge thing, but I think in the orthodontic practice, that can be a challenge, right? Because they might be plugging in
with
something
templates and everything.
With templates and all of that. And so is that something that the Chorus doctors are now adopting this new technology or finding a way to kind of implement something like this? Or is it still kind of just for new patient exams and the rest is done still in person?
I do it currently. So, if you think about it, I know when the patient needs to come back. I've already set up my template, so I can send a concierge link. And so they have a very small window. If I say I need to see Chris back in 6 weeks, they can come in as early as 5 and as late as 7. And so they're only given like a 2-week window that they're allowed to pick an appointment. So we already do that, kind of like appointments by demand. My preference is make the appointment before they leave. But if they don't, we start sending concierges and getting them to schedule online. I actually did it yesterday for my son. I got a reminder that my son needed an appointment. So I got online and I made the appointment, even though I'm right in front of my computer.
I love that.
Well, and it's such a good point. Think about it from your own experience perspective, right? We prefer to do that. Why are we assuming that our patients don't want that as well?
Totally.
And so, really be thinking about where we can meet consumer needs, meet our patient needs, help our workflows and improve our workflows in the practice, all with the eye of, optimizing potential revenue in the practice, often that is already sitting there. And I think we're going to see more AI capability coming into play. There are already some companies in the space that are using AI to manage insurance claim processing, scanning your AR for gaps. We're starting to look at how we can scale those types of technologies across our network because that's a tough thing to figure out on your own. And there are so many things you could be doing. It's really nice to know that your partnership has a strategy and they're going to thoughtfully, methodically, with some, thought to change management in your practice, plug you into those things at the right time in the right way.
One thing I want to ask about is, you mentioned this squeeze, and I think it's not just our industry that's feeling this. This is a generational shift that we're seeing. I think we're becoming a little more transactional. We're becoming a little bit more glued to our screens. Everything is short attention span, less human interaction. And I think that there's definitely a subset of the population who gravitates towards that. But one of the biggest complaints about this shift comes from people, maybe our generation or even a little bit older, who are lamenting the fact that there's no human connection anymore. My office manager literally had this conversation with me yesterday. She's been in the industry, I think 20, 25 years, something like that. She's been in there a long time. And she mentioned that she was at an appointment at one of our referring dentist offices for her kid. And she happened to run into a patient that she had seen 15 years ago. That was her patient when she was a dental assistant. And their face lit up and they were just so happy to see each other. They gave each other a big hug. And she felt like it was like a reunion, like coming home. Mm-hmm. And she compared that to the way things have been, say, the last 5 years in my practice. And she says that just isn't there anymore. It's like we have primarily a younger team and they're friendly and they're great at what they do. But that level of connection is just absent at this point. You see the same complaints, the pushback from those self-checkouts, or my wife went to McDonald's the other day and she got frustrated because there's no one to ask about a special order. And that's actually one of the questions I had for you, Mary, when you mentioned they only have this 2-week window. If you're only talking to, obviously you have support teams, so people can get around that. But let's say like a few years down the road, you only have this AI because at that point, wages are $50 an hour for a receptionist who's awkward on the phone and can't get anything done.
Yeah.
At that point, will I get frustrated if I get a 2-week window and I happen to be out of the country for those 2 weeks and there's no one to talk to or acknowledge that or make some kind of special condition? I don't want pickles on my burger. Is there any option for that? I don't see it on the kiosk.
Me either.
What is right? So where this is a challenging, question for the future, but that is certainly the trend. And how do you find that balance between accommodating people's human needs and human realities versus structuring everything neatly into a template or into an AI algorithm?
Well, it's really funny that you asked that. So I was using one of the monitoring companies for a long time, and I actually felt like my treatment wasn't going as well. And I missed that connection. So it wasn't just the patients missing it. I missed it.
Me too. Yeah.
So I've gotten rid of the monitoring. I have the patients come in more often, and I enjoy that connection and that relationship. Yeah. So maybe, Andy, it's going to be the doctors that find a way to continue having that connection that are going to be the most successful. Of course, there's always going to be the availability to automate everything, but I have to tell you, I enjoy my job better now that they're all coming into the office, even if it's every 10 weeks or wherever they're at. I like it. I like seeing them. I like talking to them, and they enjoy it too. So I think there has to be a balance. And so like if you even think about all those kids that are on all the iPads and iPhones and everything, them coming in and you being able to see them and talk to them and make a connection, that's huge.
They need that.
They may not, they do, and they may not get that connection anywhere else. And that's actually why I became an orthodontist. I remember going into my orthodontist office, and I remember being seen, and they knew my name, and they treated me kindly. Maybe the answer is we need to teach our team how to do that. We need to show them how we talk to people and how we treat to people, because that's how they're going to learn, right? Yeah. And so I don't want to give that up. I don't want to ever give up talking to people and seeing people. And maybe you being kind one day makes all the difference. We don't know what happens when they leave, but it could make a difference. And I don't want to ever lose that.
That's such a great point, Mary. Working with my father-in-law, who was, practiced up until he died at 78, he was well beyond successful at 55, 60. And he could have retired and traveled the world, did whatever he wanted. I did a lot of the treatment initially, and he kept doing the consults because that filled his cup more than anything else. He'd rather be in the consult room, meeting new people, talking with these kids, becoming, Uncle Larry. It meant more to him than really any other joy he could find in his life. And I think that if we, like you said, tap into that, not only will we be more fulfilled at work, but our patients will also choose us because we offer what these tech places are not doing, or at least forgetting about. So I think the key, when I think about it, is you want to automate things that are tedious, like scheduling appointments, make that convenient, like reduce barriers, right? But once they arrive in your office, it should be the opposite. They should know your name. They should have, like maybe cookies, or just like a friendly team that says hi to you. And so I think, like you said, the balance is the key. Find out the things that are critical to have human touch, and find out the things that maybe don't need it and people are annoyed by because it's too many steps.
Agreed.
That is the perfect balance. You're so right? Tap into the technology to remove some of the pain points. So we're not focused on the workflows in the practice. We can focus on the experience for the patients and for our teams. And I would also say, I think there's going to have to be a shift in leadership focus. To Mary's point, this generation did not grow up learning these things naturally. And so we're going to have to learn as leaders how to teach those. We're going to have to be focused on modeling that. And frankly, that may mean for some of us that we actually have to learn to do that ourselves, right? It may be second nature to us, and it may not. That, to me, that's the really exciting part of it. I think it's a shift in the way we've always operated, but it also is a huge opportunity for growth personally for ourselves, and to guide, new people in new generations, which is pretty cool.
I see an opportunity for a new form of consultant to be coming out. Consultant how to be a human being, how to interact with people. So,
Seriously.
Love it. That's a great note to end on, guys. We really appreciate you being here. This has been a fun discussion. I feel like I've learned some stuff, and that's really the point of all of this. So thank you guys so much for being with us and spending your Saturday today.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
I do want to ask you, how can our viewers get in touch if they have any follow-up questions? Let's say they want to inquire about Chorus as either an associate or potentially a doctor. What's the best way to get in touch?
You can reach us on the website. Probably the easiest is just to reach out by email, connect@chorusortho.com.
Okay. And then we're going to be putting a link as well into our show notes here, so anyone can reference that if they need to. Well, I want to thank my co-hosts again and our guests for tuning in today. As always, if you have any follow-up questions or thoughts on our show, please email us at orthodonticpearls@gmail.com. Likewise, if you would like to become a sponsor for our show, meeting, or Facebook community, reach out to us to receive a menu of sponsorship opportunities. There simply isn't a better way to get your message out to over 9,000 of the most socially engaged orthodontists across the globe than to sponsor the Orthodontic Pearls community. Until next time, we will see you later.